Liz Truss is a YouTuber now. She has clearly seen the success of Tom Nicholas channels 1 and 2 and is coming after my media empire. Her channel is apparently the home of the counter-revolution, which I'm particularly enjoying the very technical use of the phrase counter-revolution rather than herself being the revolutionary. It is very 19th century of her to kind of be the forces of counter-revolution against the historical arc towards progress. And this is particularly interesting for me as someone who has long been someone who watches politicians on the internet. And I've always enjoyed kind of seeing the approaches that various different politicians take to using the internet, sometimes well, in a kind of Zoran Mamdani way, often incredibly badly. This is also the week, of course, that Keir Starmer has gained a TikTok account with such enlightening videos as the morning commute, as he walks down the stairs and says good morning to everyone. Which is like sort of a fun bit, but then he's not really playing into it. Rishi Sunak, during his time as Prime Minister, also made some pretty strong attempts in terms of putting a lot of effort in, not in terms of outcome, to be a kind of YouTubing politician. He did these
about illegal migration.
Slightly Ronald Reagan almost inspired videos in which he kind of tried to explain various different topics from 10 Downing Street.
Let's start with a little bit of context. Before I became Prime Minister, 46,000 people crossed the channel in 2022.
But Liz Truss is a particularly fascinating example, I think, because the trend which she is most leaning into here is less one of politicians also becoming social media figures as well, but it's also a particular trend in which people in Britain, particularly right-wingers in Britain with a social media presence, have taken to kind of doing this borderline traitorous, I would say, kind of act for a largely American audience, in which they tell their audience that the UK is falling apart and everything's very violent now and everything's terrifying, which has been ongoing for quite some time, but this is some particularly egregious examples. Let's just watch the very opening bit of the Liz Truss show. I am one of the 65,000 people who have watched some of this. I will say it is tedious to watch. It's just incredibly boring. That is apart from the intro, which is kind of Academy Award level video editing.
I have just accepted Her Majesty the Queen's kind invitation to form a new government.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, it's fantastic to be back. In this new era, we're taking a new approach. It will be uncensorable and uncancelable. We can't give in to those who say we can't do better. That is a disgrace. We can make...
I love the fact that that is a disgrace, which is also kind of like a meme. She maybe apparently assumes that is a completely positive meme, that people are idolizing her somewhere.
Make the West great again. The status quo is not an option.
Well done well. And look, from a production value point of view, it is sort of fascinating how bad this looks. And I'm aware that making a video in which you say that another video looks bad is always a little bit risky, because like we could have got the settings wrong on the camera and this could also look like trash. But for an ex-Prime Minister to not be able to presumably raise enough money to make this look any better is pretty fascinating. I was chatting with my editor about this, and she was saying it's probably the bitrate just isn't very good, because it sort of looks reasonably well lit. Although there's sort of this black table down here, which makes it kind of look like, I don't know, she just sort of disappears into a hole in the ground. And look, the episode itself is kind of just tedious to watch. It is a number of like right-wing talking heads that just do the rounds in the UK, doing exactly the same talking points they do on like the 10 or 15 other versions of this that exist, but which look much better. The setting for the interview portions of the show are fascinating to me because they've clearly put some thought into like having a little table with some plants and like a Make America Great Again cap, but then the camera has sort of missed them, which is which is fun. And it does seem like it's just been filmed in a living room somewhere. The fact that they don't have more money for this it is just incredibly intriguing to me. What caught my eye, however, is if you ignore the video itself and you go to the description of the video on YouTube, it seems like whoever has uploaded this isn't entirely aware of how YouTube works. And so instead of putting a bunch of tags, or maybe as well as putting a bunch of tags in the box which is called tags when uploading the YouTube video, presumably for some attempt at search engine optimization, they've just plonked them in the description with keywords, colon, and then just a bunch of stuff, you know, UK politics, British politics. But then the framing of all of this becomes quite clear, right? And this is in there if you watch it as well. But we begin to get London crisis, we get London decline, Westminster chaos, we get UK economy collapse. The further you get down, the sort of even wackier we get. British business leaving Europe, Western civilization debate, US-UK political crossover. That's a particular one to watch. Britain's broken model, decline of Western cities, Western politics crisis, misinformation debate Britain, which is an intriguing one for this particular show to have chosen to do. Capital city under strain UK. And of course, the title of the episode being, for episode 1, you have to go for London is falling, which isn't really the phrase, is it? London is fallen would be the phrase. And the fact that Liz Truss was Prime Minister adds an extra element to all of this. But this is part of this sort of strange ongoing online trend in which you can get really good viewership numbers if you are, particularly if you are British, but if you're either British yourself or you are in the UK, making videos about how the UK is falling apart, largely for an American audience. Whether that is an intentional decision that you make, that you're making it for an American audience, which is absolutely the case here. I did not get to the second 2 interviews because it's boring. But I was watching the interview between Matt Goodwin, who is a kind of ex-academic, let's be honest, who at one point it has a similar-ish trajectory to a JD Vance. At some point, he was a kind of interesting commentator on why people voted for Brexit, and then sort of just got swept up in that world, and now is like, and they were right to do so. But throughout this interview, they are constantly like swinging it back to America or kind of explaining things clearly for an American audience, which is like something that we have to do for our show. And in fact, this whole thing always makes me kind of conflicted, I guess, because we make a lot of videos about how there are some challenges with the UK, and they go out and they are watched all around the world. But these are very much like the UK has fallen. There's a certain like reveling in it which I sort of hope that we don't do too much of. And across platforms, you can kind of find examples of this at the moment. A few days ago, there was another example in which a travel influencer, travel YouTuber who's called Kurt Gaz, I think. I've probably got that wrong. No, he is called, Kurt Kaz, sorry, came to London and was doing a video about London and used a thumbnail in which he had transformed, what I think might be Oxford Street, to take all of the signs and turn them into a kind of Arabic-looking script, and had taken a still with like just a guy on a bike and had given him like a sort of balaclava kind of face covering thing, And if you actually watch the video, it's just a fan coming over to say, hi, I like your stuff. And yet he's kind of changed it so that it looks like this guy's about to attack him. Let me find this video. The video is called Avoid This Place in London, ! Space Union flag. And he walks through London with a bodyguard, which is a fascinating decision to me. Generally just telling us how terrifying it all is.
For the internet. And now it's fucking shite. Wow. Everyone's got more rights than me. Dude, you're shaking, man. You're shaking. Don't get too angry, dude.
And welcome. Top of the morning to you. And welcome to one of the most messed up cities I've ever been to. With one of the highest crime rates in all of Europe. With about 40 knife crimes a day. Welcome to London.
Just to clarify, he's at Marble Arch on the top, like just at the end of Oxford Street, which is kind of big tourist destination. Which, like, taking a bodyguard to walk down Oxford Street is probably the lamest behavior that I can possibly imagine. But my favorite example of this was I stumbled across a little while ago, I think maybe on Twitter or now X, called Inside the Most Dangerous Town in the UK's Poorest County. And I was like, okay, the UK's poorest county, sometimes Cornwall, where I grew up, ranks there or ranks around there. I'll watch this and kind of see where it is.
Today, I'm in the largest town in the poorest county of the United Kingdom, and statistically, one of the most deprived regions in Europe too. The town of St Austell lies on the south coast of Cornwall.
Which, like, so St Austell and a lot of Cornwall, particularly like inland Cornwall, is quite poor, right? There is not a huge amount of money around. He's also walking through a town centre in the middle of the day, in the middle of the week, which you are likely to, you know, people that are there are likely to be people who aren't working. Therefore, you are likely to bump into people with less money. You're also more likely to bump into people who are hanging around in the city centre because they are rough sleeping or similar. And I guess if he points the cameras in the right place, it kind of seems terrifying. But if you've ever actually been to St Austell or to Cornwall more generally, the idea that he's sort of constantly under threat is lame. It's incredibly lame.
I'm just walking down into St Austell town centre now, and I've been here for a matter of minutes, and I was stopped by two 50-year-old fellas that have just offered me pills of some kind. Started spouting off about trammies and valleys and gabbers. No idea. That's a key sign that there's some serious...
I'm a fairly respectable lad, but I think I can work out what a valley is. And so there's one aspect of it that is these kind of going to the city and everything scary kind of guy stuff, which is all kind of downstream from Tyler Oliveira is his name, who likes to go to like the murder capital of the US and to the city that banned police. He sort of is the king of the, like, I went to a city and it was very spooky kind of thing. But this also seems to have bled out into just anything about the UK being broadly, particularly by people who lean right at the very least, to all of that content kind of being like, the country has fallen. I stumbled across a TikTok recently by Simon Squibb. Long-term watchers of Tom Nicholas 2 will have come across Simon Squibb before. He is a kind of self-help guy. If you have been on TikTok much, you may have seen him wandering the streets asking people what their dream is. He then wrote a book called What's Your Dream, I think it's called, which is just like, yeah, you go out, pursue your dreams. It's sort of the kind of broad thing. You know, it has a quote from Ali Abdaal on the front. But since then, he's kind of also become a sort of home educating guy. He's also a guy that is like, oh, as a rich guy, I pay too much tax in this country. And so has recently also just kind of become, I wouldn't say he's not like kind of led fully into the kind of right-wing online grift thing, but there's little bits of it coming out. This video, for example, being, is this country failing? ?
stressed out, and I'll tell you why.
Sad music.
I'm looking at the numbers about what's happening around the world, and yeah, 6 years ago when I started this mission of like letting people follow their dreams, I was just like, give people the knowledge that they've got a choice to be an entrepreneur, a choice to be an entrepreneur.
And just to clarify, his whole thing is just being like, hey, but have you thought about being an entrepreneur? And then that's sort of where it ends. The sort of zero awareness that that might involve at risk, and that maybe not everyone can be an entrepreneur, because who then is doing the actual jobs?
I said before they go to university, like choices, more options than just get a job, get into debt, buy a house, you know, all that sort of like debt-related treadmill stuff. And
having a house is sort of an okay aspiration, I think.
Here's the scary thing that's keeping me up. I'm looking at the numbers, like 52% of kids coming out of university, you probably, can't get a job. So turns out going on benefit is cheap, make more money. You know, average person can earn a couple £69,000 a year. If you go on benefit as a couple, £71,000 a year. So not only are there no...
Just clarify again, not true. You cannot earn £71,000 a year by being on benefits in the UK.
You might as well go and benefit than actually get a job, even if you can find one. And forgetting the power of work, power of contribution, power of having a purpose in life. And you get stripped it away into like an addicted to social benefit life. On top of that, we've got 1 million...
Oh, it's really a guy who watched a TikTok about a YouTube video about the work of Milton Friedman or something. But my favorite, okay, maybe one of my other favorite examples is Train Ticket Guy, who I came across recently, who similarly, you know, the way to pitch your video at the moment, because at least partly because it will also get a big US audience. And in fact, this guy is called Jace in America. I assume he has maybe moved to America or he's been to America. He recently found out that this country was broken when he tried to get a train.
Annoyed and angry. This is what the UK has come to. I'm losing all hope. This right here is a fine. I have just been fined £111.20. For Americans, that's $150. Oh, why? What did you do? It must have been bad. Let me give you some backstory. I don't have a car, and in the UK, trains are very accessible, so I travel on trains quite a lot. I had a rail card, which expired. It expired 2 weeks before I got this ticket. However, in the app that you used to buy tickets...
Okay, so the UK's railcard system is kind of nonsense and ludicrous, right? For anyone that is not in the UK, basically what happens is there's like a notional kind of fair amount that is the full price of a ticket, but numerous groups throughout society can get a rail card, which enables you to get a 1/3 discount on that price. And the system's kind of silly in that basically anyone, unless you are traveling alone and are between the ages of 30 and 65, I think I'm right in saying, you can probably have some kind of rail card. So if you're under 25, you can get one, but then if you're between 25 and 30, you can get one. There's like a 2 together card, so if you're traveling with someone else. There's like group save tickets where you're all traveling together. There's like family ones. Even in some regions, you can get one. And the whole system is kind of Kafka-esque almost in its just kind of weirdness, that it means that so few people end up actually paying the full amount that it becomes this whole sort of silly system. I'm currently one of the people that if I travel on my own, I do have to pay the full amount. Tickets are also expensive. Also, the guy does raise the fact that he was able to buy, like you're able to buy a ticket that you would only be able to use with a rail card without having to have the rail card if you buy it online, which is like a thing. It's a silly system. It's also a system which everyone understands. And so this is just a guy who has, you know, his rail card expired, which maybe is true. Maybe is true. I'm sure that is also the standard excuse that everyone who tries to travel without a rail card uses. And suddenly, him being, you know, a bit unorganized, which I can imagine myself doing as well, becomes that the UK is broken. He later goes on to tell us how the apps are set up to make you forget your ticket. I also came across one final one to really nail it, which I went on to X and I was trying to look for Elon Musk's various thoughts on Britain, because I think that's sort of part of all this as well. And I came across someone who had tweeted a short form video they'd found, which has the title "Christmas Cancelled in London Part 2." It involves a guy who we'll later find out is a comedian walking around being like, I can't find any Christmas trees in London anymore. They've cancelled Christmas. And an American guy has just gone on a big rant about, of course they have. Because Sadiq Khan has banned Christmas. And like, I will say...
I'm scared of saying Merry Christmas these days. What happened to this country? Beautiful Christmas.
And it just takes so much of not having actually watched the video to have done that. And yeah, this is very much a genre of stuff that exists at the moment. And I think it kind of comes out of two trends. On one hand, we have the kind of Tyler Oliveira thing, which is broadly downstream of a kind of Vice News, right? Some of you who are a little bit long in the tooth like I will remember back in the like peak days of Vice, where it was all kind of, we've sent this guy in a sort of workman's jacket and a snapback to go and smoke pot with I don't know, Osama bin Laden or someone. They had like a show where someone went to Afghanistan. They did North Korea, I think. And it was very much this sort of new journalism thing wherein the reporter would sort of be part of the story, and it would be all about like how, I think the North Korea one has a whole bit about how Shane Thingy from Vice like has to get into North Korea and like what he's feeling about going and all of this kind of stuff. And so you get this kind of like gonzo thing of seeing it through their eyes, which I think that Tyler Oliveira and also our guy who braved it to go to St. Austell, all of that stuff is downstream from that, but in a way of not actually having the courage to go anywhere actually dangerous. So you just have to go to a place and be like, oh, so spooky, so scary. But while that bit's really obvious, I've been thinking so hard about why is it that sort of this idea that like Britain is failing, Britain is like terrifying, on the edge of civil war is a phrase that gets thrown around a lot. Like what exactly is it about the UK at the moment that seems to have attracted so much of this? Because like, you know, as I've said, we make enough videos about how there are challenges and problems in the UK. Is it currently on the edge of civil war? No, not really. If you look at crime, I mean, we can look at crime levels if we want. Basically, any chart of crime overall in the UK currently is just like, ooh. We get some rises with knife crime. We get a little bit of an uptick in robberies, but like even the murder rate kind of goes down. There's like a little jump, then continues to go down. Which one of the kind of rejoinders to the idea that crime is going down is always the, oh, no one reported the thing. I'm fairly sure there are relatively few unreported murders each year. Here we go. So headline crime estimate. You do just get a line going down like this. Okay, we get a tiny little blip at the end. To be fair, we get a tiny little blip at the end where it goes up a very small amount. And so this kind of narrative, like, and there are huge economic challenges. There's a housing crisis. Like there is all of this stuff going on. But this idea that like everyone's at each other's throats and that you can't go anywhere, you can't say anything anymore, is clearly just not a reflection of reality. And probably the key audience member of this audience of like Americans that like to watch stuff about how the UK is falling is Elon Musk, right? He has this, I've made this stuff before about how he has this sort of like weird obsession with Britain. And part of that, I think, is just that it's politics that is in a different language, which if you find yourself struggling to sleep at all and are awake an awful lot for whatever reason, there is more stuff that you can watch by watching the British stuff. And it is foreign politics that is also in the English language. But I think more broadly, there is this thing of like Western civilization, right? If we return to Liz Truss's keywords, there's this really interesting way in which the American right has this kind of obsession with UK politics because it is this way to engage in, like, not only is America having challenges, not only is there this thing happening in the US, but also there's like this Western civilization thing, right? If you can bolt on the UK as well. And you can do that without having to learn Greek, you know, or learn Italian or whatever. But I think I've ultimately come to the conclusion that part of it is also that there isn't like a real figurehead of the American Democrats at the moment. Kind of, there's sort of like Gavin Newsom, and there's like Ezra Klein ends up sort of playing a bit of a thought leader role at some point. Kamala Harris hasn't entirely gone away, but not having like a really clear person to kind of be the main antagonist to the political right in America, which is partly due to the structure of how political parties work over there, means that Keir Starmer has ended up taking a lot of that heat instead. And almost the UK has become the left wing of American politics by proxy, and has become the example of the thing that that people on the American right can use as the example of all that is wrong, which maybe Mamdani will take over a little bit in the same way that Sadiq Khan has, as a way for the right to kind of like project their anger onto. But it's really weird to exist on the internet at the moment as someone from the UK, and to see this projection of the country in the kind of mind of the American right, and also the people in the UK that are sort of making the content for the American right. And then to step outdoors and just be like, where is this place that you are talking about?